Hi, everyone. This is Kathie from The Quiet Rebellion. And today we have Krista from A Life in Progress with us. How are you today, Krista?
I'm really well. Happy
Good.
to
I'm,
be here.
I'm so glad. And you in Canada? Yes?
I am.
Yeah. Okay. And so is it summer or is it still kind of spring
Uh,
when we're recording?
I mean, late spring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm in Northwest Montana, so I'm not that far from the Canadian border, but it's still like right now I'm like, are we in spring? We're not really. It's supposed to be summer, but not quite. So, Krista, I have followed you for a number of years. I feel like a really long time online that I've been a subscriber to your newsletter and followed you on Facebook. And we travel in very similar kind of slow living, simple living circles, which is, of course, my first and probably most enduring passion in life. So Krista had an email a few weeks ago talking about imperfect action, and that was the thing that it just really struck me. And so I'd love it if you kind of tell us what is imperfect action.
Sure. So I can't promise a neat and tidy, succinct definition,
Doesn't have to be.
but okay. So imperfect action, as I practice it and think of it, is a it's an idea and a practice. So it's a willingness to be in the messiness of life and to be in progress, as opposed to feeling like there's one right way to do something and always striving to get to that finish line or the polished product. So it's that willingness to be in progress, in the messiness. And then it's also a practice, a daily or hour by hour, moment by moment choice to take the next small step.
Okay. And so how does it apply? You can maybe I should have asked you first. How does that really kind of apply to your work? So maybe tell us a little bit about your work and what you do and how imperfect action fits into that.
Okay. So I think I'll start by like really I'm a recovering perfectionist, and perfectionism, like for many of us, it's a self-protective mechanism, right? It's a way of trying to protect our hearts and ourselves in a world that can feel heart crushing.
Mhm. Oof.
For myself and many people that I work with, we don't feel like we fit super well or at all into kind of the Western culture's 9 to 5 or even like hustle kind of way of being. And so I'm a highly sensitive human, a slow mover, non-hustler, as I say, at the start of my podcast every time, perfectionist tendencies that are quieter, the more I've healed. And also I really always have to be conscious of that
Mhm.
default kind of that especially if I feel stressed or I'm at capacity or past capacity, or like the world as it is right now is like really kind of scary.
Mhm.
I really need to be on guard against those perfectionist tendencies. I also, from a pretty tender age, really just didn't feel like I fit into this world. So I'd struggled with suicidal ideation. Really, it took me a lot of decades to feel like I'd finally grown into myself and I kind of found my place in the world. And learning imperfect action was one of the key pieces that helped me find my way and my path. So for me, it doesn't live separate from what I call the cycle of self-awareness, self-compassion, and perfect action. Those support each other in helping us live on purpose, as I like to say. And really by that, I mean with agency, like owning our agency or power of choice in this world and in our bodies and lives. For me, that also includes kind of that like intentional living, simple, slow living, because that is soul honoring for me.
Mhm.
And that's not what every single human on this planet needs. But so based out of my own needs and way of being in the world, from the very beginning of my work, I've sort of incorporated more. In the beginning, I didn't used to verbalize it, but it was always running in the background. Sort of this cycle of self-awareness plus plus self-compassion plus imperfect action that helps us sort of find our way.
Right. Okay, great. And I love this because I have a devil may care attitude about a lot of things, for better or worse. And I'm always just like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Right. Like, and I have both the, well, what's the worst that can happen? And I'm sure I can figure it out. Like
I mean, that's amazing.
It's just, it's just who I am. Uh, Sometimes to the chagrin of my husband, because I'm like, "Ah, I'll just do it this way," and he's like, "Yeah, that's not exactly right." Right? You know what I mean? So, and sometimes that does bite me. I don't wanna pretend that it always works out, because it sure doesn't, but, a lot of the times. And so one of the things you wrote was, "We find our way in action, not before."
Yeah.
And I have definitely found that to be true in my own life. Like, I don't overthink things. I just dive in, for better or for worse. Sometimes that works out, sometimes that doesn't, and I'm okay with both outcomes. But how can listeners come to kind of trust that little bit of light that we have is enough, and that if we just maybe move a little bit in whatever pace works for us? I mean, how do we trust that voice if we're not used to it?
Okay. So I would love to preface that by just saying like responding to you first, if that's
Yeah,
okay. And
sure.
then I may need a reminder. My
Sure,
53
sure.
year old brain sometimes spins
Yeah.
off in different directions. So okay, so that diving in.
Mhm.
So I have done that too. So I am a questioner and I push back against the status quo, and I have always done that. And partly by necessity, and partly because I do think it's part of my wiring and gifting is to I just don't believe that there is only one way. I don't believe any story that's just handed to me like, this is the way, this is what success means. I'm like, is that true though? This is,
Yeah.
so I'm grateful for that. And also, like I think I said out loud that I have also had a lot of fear and anxiety in my life. And so often I'm jumping or leaping through the fear, by the way.
Right.
I am not sort of just like laissez-faire. I am concerned, and also I'm going to leap. Um, so I'm also very like intuitive person, like very gut led. And so maybe I want to say almost, just to sort of, just in case, but I think all of my major life decisions have always come from that place.
Right.
They don't always make sense on any like on the level of reason or logic, but I know that I know that I know. And
Mhm.
so not everybody's wired that way, right? And so even if you're not wired that way, like Kathie or myself, to listeners, still we all need to practice this. And it can look, sound, feel different for each of us. But so here's the thing. So when I say we find our way in action, not before, I believe that's true for all of us. And one of the things I mean by that is that we don't find our way in theory. We don't find our way by sitting on a couch. And it is human preservation instinct to want to wait until the perfect conditions, right?
Right.
Until we've got it all mapped out and we understand all the risks and it's an impossible task because we can't see what we can't see. We can't, very often what we're doing is we're stepping into the unknown, and it's impossible to foresee every instance, every possibility for something that we haven't experienced before. And also I see a lot in the work I do with women that we have, there's so much storytelling, like that we carry that makes us judge ourselves pretty harshly if we ever do something quote unquote wrong, make a mistake, we fumble, we flail, whatever. And I just think all that bumbling and flailing and everything is part of being human. It's part of the work.
Right.
And the only way to avoid that discomfort is don't do anything. Is like stay under the covers. Don't risk, don't be vulnerable, don't be messy. Okay, so the self-trust, we forge the self-trust in practice.
Right.
And so how do we get comfortable with that, or how do we learn self-trust? It's by doing it. But here's a beautiful thing is like to anybody listening, it's like you don't have to jump off a cliff. We do this in low risk ways. Sometimes there are big life events where we're thrust into change that we didn't ask for, we didn't consent
Right.
to. And I'm not talking about that, but right now I'm talking about like, what if you want to sort of stretch and risk and kind of go off the beaten path or whatever? It's like you get to practice in low risk ways. So for instance, we build self-trust every time we listen to the wisdom of our body and we respond with compassion. Your body says, I'm hungry. Instead of saying, oh, stupid body, you just ate. You don't get to be hungry again.
Yeah.
Or shaming ourselves, like, you don't even fit into your Levi's anymore. You're not allowed to eat. all that shaming and the judgment, and sometimes it's very subtle.
Right.
It actually breaks self-trust. But every time we hear a cue of hunger or thirst, of fatigue, and we respond with kindness, we build self-trust. And there are so many more examples, just real life, day-to-day examples that I'm happy to share, but I'll see kind of
Yes,
where you
no.
want to go.
No, that's true. And I was just going to say, and we said this in another podcast, excuse me, in an episode I did with Jess Walters, and we talked about Jennifer Walters. Sorry. We talked about wild kindness and discomfort and trying to be kind but also kind to yourself. It's discomfort. And I think it's just like any other kind of endurance sport, honestly. And it's kind of what it is an endurance sport. If you're training to run a marathon or swim a mile, you don't start by running 26.2 miles. You start by walking half a mile and then running. And so, and building discomfort, I honestly believe it's the same thing. I think if you can sit with the discomfort, you will build an endurance for it and be able to do something else a little bit different. I firmly believe that. And I've seen it in my own life when I'm willing to sit with something that makes me a little uncomfortable, like maybe saying no to something I was asked to do
Yeah,
for a cause maybe that I'm really active in, or I really want to be a participant in that thing, but I can't for whatever reason. I have to say no. It's uncomfortable, but if you do it, the next time you have to do it, it's a little easier and it just gets easier. So do give us some examples of small ways we can kind of be uncomfortable, but practice imperfect action in our daily lives, if you don't mind.
sure. So, so here's a lovely thing is that imperfect action permeates every part of our life. So it's like we can be talking about boundaries. We can talk about the way in which we speak to ourselves. We can talk about putting our work into the world imperfectly. So we can go any direction with our finances, like literally any direction of life. We can talk about this. So really it's about where do you feel like you're holding yourself back? Where do you feel incapacitated, or your inner critic is really loud right now or whatever. So you could start there. But I'll post some examples maybe from my own life. So starting my business, one of my commitments, I was terrified, Kathie, like terrified. I mean, it's a different level of terrified from
Sure.
like some situations, but whatever. But I felt under threat. My nervous system really was it felt like it was a threat, right? So hit publish on my first website, first version, start publishing blog posts. Like that was rough. So I made a commitment to myself in the beginning that I would publish one post a week minus whatever holidays I had decided. And it could be as crappy as possible. And the goal was you hit send by Sunday night. So often I was like last minute, I
Yeah,
got to
sure.
do something. And it wasn't about, was I a good writer? Was my grammar good? Whatever. It was about me building the capacity in myself to know that I could do this. I could be with this often intense discomfort in my body and still do the thing anyways. Now, for me, this is all noise if we're not doing things that are rooted in our values. Like, because
Oh, sure.
that's another topic, sort of, but it is part of my work as well. It's like, I'm not interested in noise and doing stuff just cause. Like, I want to know, like,
Right.
why am I doing this? Why is it meaningful to me? Yes, no, don't do it otherwise, right? Does it align with my honest capacity, with my wiring, etc.? Anyways, but let's say that it is all tied to that. Learning to love myself. So recently I have a membership community, and in there I've been bringing up again how we're talking about boundaries a lot and befriending ourselves. And I shared that 20 years ago, I made a decision to stop bullying myself. My inner critic was vicious.
Mm-hmm.
I actually loathed myself. I was
Mm.
disappointed by myself daily. I despaired, like, will I ever get to a different place, where I can be kind to myself? And so, fast track. Yes, it worked. I have.
Yeah.
Here I am. Like I've
Yeah.
been here for
Yeah.
a long time, but I couldn't see it. At that point, all I could do is practice imperfect action. I was learning how to interrupt old mean thoughts in the midstream and choose a new thought. I had to do that like 18 times a day. I had a no bullying policy. So whenever I was able to catch that inner chatter or whether it was after the fact or midstream, I would halt it and redirect my focus. Like that was effort.
Oh,
It
I'm
was
sure. Yes.
hard,
Yeah.
hard, hard work. And it was those incremental choices that had nothing to do with perfection, but what it did have to do with was consistency. It was about the choice and then the commitment to practice with consistency. And it's like amazing what happens in our lives when we will do that.
Right. I so agree. I always say that time is going to pass no matter what. So you might as well just be as consistent as possible. I understand. Sometimes there's just so many things we all have to deal with. And I'm not judging or pushing anyone, but it's just if we can be consistent, and I've learned in my own life that if I can just do it and pay attention, like you said, to your values and what you're doing in a culture, because we do live in this culture where like hustle and productivity is how we're supposed to find our worth. I mean, that's what it says on the outside. That's not what I believe, and I know that's not what you believe. So the idea is that we want to kind of rebel against that, but it's not always easy, and there is a lot of stuff that we have to like fight from our inner critics. So how do we begin that process? Is it just a matter of recognizing, and once we do recognize, how do we even begin? Can you offer us any tips or advice?
So, do you mean how do we begin practicing consistent imperfect action?
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, okay, so there are many entry points. So,
Mhm.
I think where I find this to be most effective is with that cycle that I mentioned. So anytime, any situation in one's life where something isn't quite the way that you would like it to be, we're looking for even just tiny, tiny little bits of like awareness. So self-awareness. What's happening? What am I noticing? What am I feeling? Or even that self-awareness could be, what do I want or need? I mean, it sounds so simple, but how many women in the middle season of life can't answer the question, what do I actually want or need? It's a lot.
Yeah. Right?
So we're just looking for a tiny little spark of awareness. I always say, like, self awareness without self compassion can actually lead us to spiral deeper into despair or deeper into bullying ourselves. So, awareness alone isn't enough. So, we need to couple that with compassion. There are three components to self compassion, but I'm just going to share one right now. It's people get it. It's self kindness.
Mhm.
Just be on your own side, treat yourself like a friend. Or if you can't do that, who do you love most in the whole world? It could be your pet. Would you ever kick your pet? Would you yell at them? Would
Right.
you, or would you recognize, you see their beauty, even if they're being rascals, right? So
Right.
it's like you couple that awareness with kindness. That could be as simple as offer yourself a kind word, cheer yourself on. Like I talk to myself all the time. I'm like, good job, Chris. I'm proud of you. That was really hard. And you did it anyway. Like I just encourage myself all the time. A lot of us haven't. Now I did grow up with a lot of love and I've still needed to reparent myself in some ways because sometimes our parents didn't know how. They didn't have the tools or
Right.
the
Right.
the
Sure.
language for certain things. So we don't always have healthy models of this. So this is a place where we might need to look around and sort of glean examples from other people. But just know you're allowed to talk to yourself and you can't go too far into compassion or self-kindness. You're not going to take it too far. Sometimes people's critics say, yeah, but if you're too kind to yourself, what if you just hunker down in your addiction or in whatever is not going well? It's like, you don't run that risk, not from
Right.
self-compassion. So, okay, so we've got a spark of awareness. We bring in that little teeny bit of kindness. And now we can ask, okay, now what? What's one tiny action, one micro step that I could do, I could take? I know this is very vague, and so I'm happy to go into more specifics, but this is something that I do. Okay, actually, I'm sorry. spinning
That's
all over
okay.
the place, but I'm going
No,
to
you're
try
fine.
to make it as actionable as possible. So I do want people to know that every single day and week, I build into my life opportunities for me to practice these things: awareness, compassion. Now what? What's the
Oh,
next
okay.
micro step? So actually, I'll offer an example of that.
Okay.
So every evening, I have a practice I call my 3-2-1 practice. I don't know if you've seen it, Kathie, but
I think so, yeah.
it's
But explain for everybody else.
okay. So I've been doing this for probably like close to 15 years, and hundreds of women that I work with have tried this on for size and experienced the benefits. So it's at the end of my day. I just do this mentally, and I name 3 things I'm grateful for in the day, 2 things I did well today. So that's an opportunity for both awareness of what was happening in the day and what I did well. It's not about perfection, but did I, in some seasons, showering deserves a pat on the back. You might notice where you felt anger and you paused before reacting or responding. You might notice that you remembered to feed your beautiful body today instead of like going till 3 p.m. without eating. But three things I'm grateful for, 2 things I did well today, 1 thing I could do differently next time. That's sort of that like now what step. It's the language is really important because a lot of my clients have perfectionist tendencies, and so they always change the language. What could I do better? And I said, but that's not the task. It's not about doing better. It's about what could I do differently next time? It's actually about hope. It's about planting seeds of possibility in our minds so that the next time we're in a similar situation, we already have some ideas to pull from. So that's an example of how we can think, okay, so what am I working on? I'm building a course right now. I'm just going to pull
Mhm.
this out of thin air. I'm building a course right now. Let's say that I'm noticing fearful stories about nobody's going to buy it, and what was I thinking, and whatever the chatter is. And that's all real. I do deal with this. So I have to,
Sure. Sure.
daily I get to practice.
Yeah.
So I can bring awareness. I'm noticing the fearful stories coming up again. I'm noticing how what that activation is doing in my body. I pause. I bring some kindness to what's happening. So it could be, some days it's, hun, just go take a break and sit in the sun for a bit. Another day it might be, I hear you. It's really vulnerable to stretch. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this 10 years. The vulnerability doesn't go away. I love you. I'm proud of you. What's the one next step? And then I might think, okay, today I'm going to create a couple images and put them out into the world with a link to my course, or I'm going to write 500 words related to one piece of it. I don't know. This is also random, but
Sure, sure. No.
it is about lowering the bar, making the task bite sized so it's not so threatening, but not allowing ourselves to permanently hide under the covers.
Right. This is really great. And so the idea, I think, as we've been talking, is really the idea behind imperfect action is to help us live more fully according to what is important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And more
Yeah.
intentionally through our lives. Because we live in an age where it is really so incredibly easy to just not even pay attention to our lives. Right. We could quite literally just scroll
Yeah.
on our phones the whole day. And
Yeah.
and
Ugh.
um
And that is
I
not
know.
living.
No, it's not. And it's actually just often becomes really fearful and and numb and yes, and not even fun really, but it becomes an addiction. And so the idea that I believe that what you're talking about, and because I feel this way so much, is that we just have to kind of do things in the world so that we're finding purpose and meaning in our lives. And
Yeah.
it's really easy to our current culture allows us to kind of numb that to where we almost don't even feel like we need to do it, but then we're miserable. We may not fully realize it, but we're not really probably very happy when we're doing that.
I mean, most people, by the time I guess a person comes to work with me, they at least have that awareness, like that
Right.
scrolling addiction is just like has so many negative impacts and not even one positive one. So it's like
Right.
social media is a tool that obviously allows us to connect and do lots of
Right.
beautiful things in the
Sure.
world. But
Right.
yeah, the
And oh, go ahead.
no, I'm good.
Okay, I was just gonna say, and so for someone who is maybe hasn't quite gotten to that awareness yet,
Yeah.
is there some sort of encouragement that you would offer them? Or, they're longing to live more fully, but they're stuck in some sort of fear or hesitation, or if they even realize that they're stuck. I'm gonna say you don't realize you're stuck until you realize you're stuck, and it's
I
hard
think
for, I mean, it's so individual.
people don't use that language maybe, but
Right.
they know they're really unhappy. They might
Okay, there
say,
you
"Is
go.
this all there is?" They
Okay,
might
there you
hate
go.
themselves. They might be numbing out every day
Mhm.
because the fear about the state of the world is so
Oof.
overwhelming. Like it shows the symptoms are there and they may use different language.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so
So
is there something you would encourage them? I mean, is there some sort of, I mean, obviously you can't heal the world through this podcast. It'd be great. I would love that, but I know we can't. But is there some sort of encouragement, something that you would offer them to help them just even get to the next step, baby step?
yeah. So I mean, like, okay, there's a couple things. One thing that I just want to acknowledge at least is that I believe you and I, Kathie, are in seasons of life where we have the capacity to engage in the world
Mhm.
in some way. And we have the values, like I'm making assumptions about you based on what you share online. Our values lead us that direction. And we are in a season where we have enough resourcing and enough capacity to be able to do that. Okay. So, and that's a lovely, beautiful thing. And there was a season in my life where that wasn't true for me.
Mhm.
And I was in a season of needing and different life seasons where I didn't have that ability. My focus needed to be on healing, restoration, survival in some cases, like whatever. And that is actually okay. And if that's where you are, there is no shame and judgment in that. And so how you practice imperfect action really could be about like, do you have daily and weekly rest in your life? How do you speak to yourself? Are you drinking enough water? Do you need to build your community care kind of network? Like, do you need to ask for help? Like, those might be the things that you really need to focus on right now. You're not in a place to be worrying about how am I going to fix the world? It's like, how can I stay afloat and not crumble? And that is wisdom when we can recognize that we're in a season of either recalibration or even survival. That's wisdom. And if you are in a season where you have more resourcing and more capacity, and I think of this as you've done some work of like healing, putting down deep roots and filling up so that you can now share
Right.
from your overflow, then your steps are different.
Right, sure.
And and I think it's really important, like when we're talking about the state of the world, right? Like because they shut down. We shut down because it's so overwhelming and it feels like, well, what on earth can I do? Like, what do I have to offer, right? So finding our next right thing or that tiny micro step in front of us is allowed to look very different for each of us. But in order to build that inner sense of agency, like agency can sound like I have what it takes. I have what it takes to meet the next life challenge. I have what it takes to feel fear and not fall apart. Whether it's an internal focus or an external focus, both are important. And the reason I say this is that I really believe that your wholeness and joy matter. Kathie, your freedom, wholeness, and joy is what allows you to make a difference in the world.
Right, right.
And I think often we're trying to give from emptiness, and that too is perpetuated in Western culture. We
Sure.
burn out, we run dry, and then we fault ourselves for having nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's actually a really sneaky subversive tactic, right? If we're so run dry, how do we stand up and fight? How do we use our voice? How do we like fight for change? So anyways, so if you need to be healing right now, do that. And then And then, okay, so I don't even know what the question was
No,
anymore.
but you're okay. No, you were good. You were perfect, which was right. Just you're encouraging people to just recognize where they're at and do that. And we all have very different seasons of life, and that is the most true thing. And something else that you had touched on, and something that I've been touching on even more recently because of the state of the world. I've been writing a lot more about just the fact that we have to do something because it does feel overwhelming and we all feel like, "Oh my gosh, I can't possibly impact change." You can't. You can't possibly impact change on everything, but you can impact change on one thing. So just choose one thing, whatever that one thing is, and lean into that and try to drown out the voice that you have to do all the things. And of course, I agree. And I say this and have said this since the beginning of all my writings. I believe that if you live a simple life at home, that emanates and ripples out to the world at large in many different ways. So you absolutely have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself first. And something that you had mentioned about community, and obviously I think community is really important. We are social beings. We are social animals, social creatures. There are some of us who are probably more I'm very much an introvert. So I can very much spend a lot of time alone and be just fine. But we still need community. We still need it. So how can imperfect action help us find and nurture community? I mean, I'm assuming that it's possible, but what ways do you think that's possible? Just reaching, like you said, probably just reaching out and asking for help sometimes is a start.
Yeah. So I think it's wonderful that there's so many wise humans that have been writing and talking about this, about community care and
Mhm.
about communal resilience and all of that. And so I think like first recognizing, like you said, that all of us need healthy community, including those of us who are strong introverts and have
Mhm.
a tendency towards isolation. We thrive in solitude. We need ample like spaciousness and
Right.
thinking time and all of that. But we too need community. We need each other. And myself, I found that for the most part, I practice, honoring my wiring and capacity. And this is actually one of the places where I've had to really disrupt my natural tendency because it led me into despair. I would spiral down, and because I felt so much shame and I felt so much judgment that I would disconnect even more. And
Mhm.
then in that aloneness, I was in danger. And so making even tiny bids for connection is powerful. And that could look in some seasons for me that actually often it does. Like I'm not a big phone person. I'll text a friend sometimes and just say, sometimes I will say, do you have 20 minutes to just like listen to me rant, or whatever, or
Mhm.
to hear me, or it might be just a text to say, I'm having a really hard day. I don't need to talk. I just need to remember I'm not alone.
Right.
And it's like, it just reminds you that there's this connection. So we all need community, like you said. And one of the things that I've often said, and it's still true for me, is that I haven't easily found my people in my local community. I live in a really small conservative town.
Mhm.
I have in the past tried different communities and been in different communities, but I always did feel like I had to mask parts of me for belonging, and I'm unwilling
Sure.
to do that anymore. But finding online community has been essential for my wholeness.
Mhm.
So my Brave and Beautiful community, for example, and I know that we need people who can drive us to the hospital, who can bring over a casserole or feed our cats. And also, we don't always find it,
Right.
or we haven't found it yet. And so one way of practicing imperfect action is getting creative about how can you find people where you feel less alone, or you feel witnessed and heard and understood, and people who will encourage you to keep doing this type of work and
Mhm.
growing and healing and all of that. And then hopefully we all can then, continue to figure out how do we get involved. Like I also used to be like super volunteering and doing all this stuff way past capacity, like over giving, over functioning. And,
Sure.
that's not necessarily the ideal either. But
No.
anyways, just like we get creative. Sometimes it's like go to your Facebook groups and look for a foraging group, a book club. Like be creative. Don't have too many judgments around, well, this doesn't count. It's like if
It
you're
does,
feeling
sure.
safe with other humans and you're laughing a little bit and even having some, like some human connection, it's good.
There you
So it
go.
doesn't have to meet all the needs for always, but
Right.
I do, and I struggle with this. Like, I just want to be so transparent. Like I said, I'm a really strong introvert.
Mhm.
And people don't know that because I'm like talking online and all of that. And
Sure.
it's like, so you don't always realize that. So this isn't easy for me. But in this moment in history, more than ever, I think we need to do this work. I don't know. I don't have like pretty language for this, and I'll pause in just a second, see what you have to say, Kathie. But it's like more than ever, I think it is the rebellious way, the quiet, rebellious way,
Mhm.
the subversive, like joyful way of saying, I'm not going to jump into this stream of hate, fear, and division that is ripping us apart. And I'm going to counter that in a grassroots way
Right.
by loving my neighbor,
Mhm.
by chit chatting with the lady at the grocery store, by buying locally and saying hi to the person who fills my laundry detergent thing container. Like they're small and like, but they matter. I think it's like advocating for the type of world we want to live in.
I agree. I agree. And one of the questions I kind of had for you was like, why, like a lot of people will wait, right, to form community until it's perfect, right? And you've been talking about this, or until they're healed, whatever that means, because, whatever that means to you too. But I think that we don't have to do that. And that is actually probably one of the benefits of an online community, especially if you're introverted, because then you don't have to actually like go, somewhere. You don't have to leave your
Pants
house.
on or a
Right.
bra.
Right, right, or makeup or whatever makes you feel like you have to be out in public. I mean, I too live in a small town and I will go out in public and not stress about that kind of thing. But I know other people do and that's fine. But the nice thing about online communities is that you can just show up and not be anonymous, because I don't want you to be anonymous. Plenty of people are anonymous and mean, and that's not what I'm encouraging. But you can be kind of just you can kind of watch the group for a little bit until you feel
Hmm.
comfortable to jump in, until you feel safe, or until you see, oh gosh, that person is just as awkward as I am, right? Or that
Hmm.
person makes the kind of jokes that I would make that are maybe a little sillier, a little whatever. And so it makes the puns. I very much like puns. So that's the nice thing about online communities. And they could also help you then transition slowly to, if you join an online community like yours, and then maybe you join a local one, and then you go to the knitting group or whatever, and actually meet face to face. So it's very much baby steps. And I think I agree with you. It's really important.
Yeah. And I was gonna say too, like, for instance, in my work, like, really, what do I care most about? I mean, there's probably like many things, but one of them is like that we befriend ourselves. We're on our own side. And that's because I believe that when we're able to witness our whole selves, like our true selves, strength and struggle and all, and love ourselves, we're able to also offer that to other messy humans. Like we
Right.
see beyond the behavior and we see the beauty within, or we see, and that may not be true in every situation. But one of the other benefits in terms of thinking of larger community is that the more that we feel deeply rooted in ourselves, I know who I am. I know my value, my worth as a human. It's not tied to what others think of me or my social awkwardness. I love myself. And I also, my ego isn't running the show all the time. So it's
Right.
like,
Right.
so I'm willing to also be humble and I'm willing to keep growing and learning and
Hmm.
and all of that. It allows me to go be in community where our values are at odds sometimes and I can hold my own. I can be kind but firm. I can enter into dialogue and not lose myself in people pleasing or performing or peacekeeping, whatever. Like I have found that to be true, that the more I am at home in myself, I'm able to go be my true self in every other situation. Not that every like social situations take a lot out of me, but I don't come home like I don't lose myself Like, or if I feel like, oh, I said that thing again and I could see people's face, the reaction on their face, I don't like fall apart about it. It's like, oh, yep, I did that again. I don't do small talk
Right.
very well or gracefully
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like, it's okay. So I think that's another beautiful thing is like finding our places where we do feel safe. But I do think so. I learned this from other wonderful humans, but like I talk in my spaces about brave community. I try to establish nervous system safety for myself and for others. I can't control for everybody. One of the ways we do that, like you were saying, in online spaces is some people, when they're coming with, trauma, grief, past hard experiences, they can come and keep their camera off. And sometimes they're crying in the background, but they're with us. They come
Right.
to the calls and they're allowed to do that in my spaces. And it's because I've needed that as well. Not every space, in some spaces, you can't do that for the sake of safety too. So whatever.
Right. Right.
But learning that safety in however we can forge it, then, like you said, allows us to kind of go out into expand sort of our circle. Can I say one more thing about that? I don't know what the
Yeah. No.
time frame
No.
is.
You're fine. Keep going. We're fine. We're fine.
Okay. So because in the talking points, you had mentioned about
Hmm.
communal resilience. And I've been thinking a lot about this, and it's not dissimilar from what we've been talking about, but I offer an exercise. People can find it on my website or reach out and I'll point them towards it, but it's called the Circle of Impact. And it's basically like and I recommend doing this a couple times a year. It's kind of put yourself in the circle and then draw some concentric circles around. And we can kind of think about, okay, who's in my inner circle? Who's in my next circle? And then kind of start moving out. And it's actually a really powerful visual that helps us see where maybe we're trying to cram too many needs and people up close and personal. And that's why we're constantly like overwhelmed. Sometimes we recognize that our boundaries are really leaky because people who don't actually deserve that inner circle space need to be moved out further. But we can also kind of look at it and start thinking about the bi-directional impact. Everybody in our circle, we're impacting each other.
Hmm.
And we're having these ripples. And that includes, how we smile at our neighbor, or if my neighbor will come over and start if our truck dies in the winter, he'll come over and help us get started up again. Like how we treat each other in these small little ways, it matters. There's ripples that happen. It's not only the people who are like, have a lot of money and a lot of power and influence and a lot, shiny gifts. All of us are always having an impact, and we are being impacted by people that we don't even know. Like,
Hmm.
but we can also use that to see that because of that bidirectional impact, when we want to make a change in the world, like say on a nation level, there's shit going down and you want to make a difference, but you're neglecting the smaller circles, you and your relationship with self, your immediate family, you're not going to have the effect that you want to have, because every community, even if it's me and me, and then me and my family, and me and my inner circle friends, and then me and my local community, and blah, blah, blah. It's all like, it's in relationship.
Hmm.
So it's not less than to start closer to home. It's not less important.
No.
Like you said, I agree. Do something. One, because why? That gives you agency. You feel like you're not a victim. I don't like that word. You feel like you're not disempowered. You're taking back some sense of power of choice in the world, but also know that your health spills over, the health of your family unit spills over, the health of you and your neighbors spills over. So no matter where you have an access point, it matters. Like, it counts. It's
Right.
not
Absolutely.
less
Yes.
important than. So yeah.
That's really great. I'm so glad you said that. And something else you had mentioned about being humans are messy. We are messy no matter where we're at. We're messy. And so I think because of our social media world, we need to see other people being their authentic, messy selves.
Right.
Because everything is so curated and so perfect. And I'm guilty of it too sometimes, especially when I'm taking a photo. I want it to look nice because I want the artistic nature of it. But sometimes it's worth just showing somebody that the table is messy. It's just messy because we live here, right? So be messy and authentic. The world needs your messiness and needs you to be authentic, because so much of the world is not, or so much of what we see and consume online is not authentic. Please show up and be your messy self. Okay, so what is, as we kind of sort of wind down, what is one small, doable, imperfect action someone could take today that might lead them to, some sort of, I don't want to say, that's just going to help them on their journey? Is there a small, imperfect action? I know I hear that too. I don't know what that
And
is.
that's my laptop.
Okay.
I don't know what it's doing. I
Okay.
think it's overheating, actually.
Okay. Well, let's wrap up. Is there a small, doable, imperfect action you could recommend?
Yeah, so I was just checking my notes because, yeah, I was thinking
Yeah.
about this morning, and I mean, I'm going to offer two things. Choose
Sure.
one, start small. I don't know if anybody's heard this, but like if you're in the holistic health realm, it's like if you're going to start a new supplement or something, you start low, go slow. And
Right.
that's kind of my approach for most things. It's because
Yeah.
it's a more sustainable approach. So 5 minutes is more than zero.
Right.
So, but two things, thinking about this idea of your wholeness and joy matters, your freedom liberates others. Like, so what you pour into yourself is also what spills over into the world around you. I'm going to go there and say, like, I don't offer people a lot of shoulds, but I do offer this should. And I feel very comfortable offering this as a should, that we all need non negotiable rest built into the day and the week. It can be as small as whatever you feel you can begin with realistically and sustainably, but we cannot continue in this way of being, this sort of like hustle, burnout, like way of being. So we have to have, we're humans and human bodies, non-negotiable rest and recovery built into every day and week.
All right.
And if you're not rested, it's really difficult to like think wisely, to make
Mm-hmm.
clear values aligned decisions, right? So, okay, the second thing is I feel the same way about any like examination, a tiny bit of spaciousness for thinking, reflecting about what's working well, what isn't, and why, or what could I do differently next time, or what's going on right now? What do I want and need? So I would call that like examination, like living an examined life, or just reflection or review, whatever it is. And I equally believe that building even a tiny bit into the day and the week is essential. And I just want to make a final argument for why, because I really see this in my work that we're often looking for the quick fix. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking for the painless way to, jump over the messiness of life to ideal conditions, ideal self, whatever. And it's not real. And the only way for us to get to change our lives, if that's what we're looking for, and that might mean like finding a more sustainable pace, learning how to love ourselves well, or being more active in our local communities, whatever it is, if we don't have even a tiny bit of spaciousness or pause to even like challenge automatic assumptions or ask ourselves interesting questions, there is no way of changing what is and creating something new. Yet these are sorely lacking in this society.
Right.
We're just like go, 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 fill to the brim, overflowing, and or numbed out, and we just are not practiced at this. So again, make it as small as is realistic. If it's really uncomfortable, can you start with 2 minutes? Can you start with that 3-2-1 practice? Just something somewhere.
Perfect. All right, Krista, tell everybody where they can find you online, please.
alifeinprogress.ca is my website.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of ways to connect. I'm on social media as well, but maybe come over to my website and start there and reach out and say hi.
And we will link those, and I'll link your community as well in the show notes for everyone. So thank you very much for being here. I
Okay,
really
thanks.
appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Thank